The CDC director yesterday said a mask can be more effective than a vaccine for some people.
CDC didn't say that.
CDC director did yesterday.
No, they didn't.
I'm not trying to argue with you. He did.
I know. I trust me. I saw it. It's not true.
There's a lot of stuff on Facebook that talks about how Democrats are running child trafficking rings.
I believe it.
You believe it?
I do, because I believe a lot of the movie stars. I do. I believe it. I believe it. I mean, come on. Go look at Epstein's Island. Go look at his Democrats.
Especially when they
Come
show
on.
pictures of him.
Come on.
A refusal to believe facts was a big part of the election. That was me talking to some Trump supporters in Staten Island who were dug in on some of the conspiracy theories and insisted facts were not facts. And while President Trump went on to lose the election, conspiracies haven't lost. They're still out there. They're still causing problems. It's something that is not lost on my next guest, an outgoing Republican congressman who once dropped thousands of dollars on trips to hunt down Bigfoot. Joining me now, Republican Congressman Denver Riggleman of Virginia, who is the author of Bigfoot, It's Complicated. He joins me now. You know, Congressman, I got this pitch in my email about your book, and I initially dismissed it until I heard an interview you did and how it linked to conspiracy theories. And I thought it was just a really brilliant way of trying to get at the problem that we are facing right now. Specifically, I mean, I know it's on both sides at the extremes, but it is more mainstream right now within the Republican Party. What do you do about this?
Well, you know, thanks for having me on, by the way. I did try to get at people a little bit with this book, Bigfoot, It's Complicated, because, you know, I've been a victim of disinformation. But, you know, my background is in intelligence, counterterrorism, and non-kinetic attack, sort of like what you saw with the SolarWinds hack. And I just wanted people to know that belief systems can completely overtake your life view. And looking at different sets of Bigfoot believers, not only did they get very angry with me, they actually thought, Katie, and I hope you're okay with this, they thought I was making lists. I worked for the National Security Agency. They thought I was making lists to hack into their bank accounts and destroy their lives because we knew that Bigfoot existed. That is sort of what you're seeing out there right now. And it's not just the conspiracy theories that we've heard, like you just had that incredible interview or that incredible back and forth about those poor ladies who believe in adrenochrome. And that Democrats are, you know, a Satan-worshiping cabal of pedophiles that are trying to plan a deep state coup against the president. It's that, you know, we got anti-vaxxers and we have people like General Mike Flynn out there talking about martial law and military efforts to overturn the vote. So really, it really is an analogy that these belief systems can take over, Katie, and they can run your life. And, you know, there's not weaponized Bigfoot people out there, right? They're not actually coming at your house because you don't believe in Bigfoot, but they don't like each other. But we're certainly seeing insanity being weaponized and monetized in a massive grift across the internet, and all of it's based on things that are massively false. They're not even close to being real.
When you talk about monetization, you make the connection between Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani, who are both part of the legal effort to overturn this election on behalf of the president, and link them to those who were selling folks the conspiracy of Bigfoot.
This is a griftocracy. I mean, that's the best thing I have for it, right? It's a bunch of people who are in on the grift. When I did that first Bigfoot expedition, I gave thousands of dollars, and there were 40 people there. I mean, they made a lot of money off, you know, going after Bigfoot. I guess I could start some kind of business going after unicorns, right? Or going after the chupacabra, right? Or maybe the Kraken. So, you know, so that's the issue that we have right now is that people are monetizing this. And what you're showing even on the screen was just the fun time we had out there. And we would go out, people, they would show us Bigfoot caves. They would show us maps to wilderness areas. It's the same thing you see on digital media. They have a map where you can go, whether it's on Gab or Parler or BitChute or YouTube or Twitter or Facebook. The encrypted chans, right? The encrypted image boards. All that is the same map that people are using right now.
I talked to an NYU psychology professor about conspiracy theories. He'd done a lot of research on it. And he said that when you try to fact check people on it, they only dig in further. They get more stringent, stronger in their beliefs. They don't believe the fact checks. So given that, and that's the effort that we make every day on television, it's what Facebook is trying to do with its fact checks and Twitter, et cetera. What sort of responsibility do our political leaders need to take to try and combat this themselves? Is it possible to combat this?
I think it is. I think you got to do it compassion, but you also have to be very offensive. What we're going after is really dissemination of disinformation, but an online disinformation campaign that might be the biggest conspiratorial grift in history. you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. So we have to be very offensive. And I think we almost have a digital vaccine, just like the COVID-19 vaccine, where we use machine learning, we use big data, we use fact-based analysis, and we aggregate data from public trust companies, and we go after these hashtags, we go after these messages, we get on these boards, we fight them on their turf. It's something I was very good at when I was in the military, especially in the counterterrorism and counterintelligence world. And I think that's what we do. And that's why I'm on the board of the Network Contagion Research Institute now. We just released one of the most, I would say, in-depth quantitative analyses of QAnon just yesterday or day before. So I'm going after them. So I'm not going to stop, Katie. It's my time to go after them.
Let's hope all of our political leaders start going after it, because it is dangerous. Congressman Denver Riggleman, thank you so much for joining us. And this reminds me always to read emails further and not just the first line. We appreciate it.
Beware of the woods, Katie. Beware of the woods. Watch out when you go out there. It's a little scary. You know, it could be a QAnon guy or Bigfoot. You never know.
You never know. Or just my husband without a shirt. That's a terrible.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.